So Eli Manning finally retiring, the sports world undergoing a major tragedy that nobody expected, and then also just a whole lot of other Giants news. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Giants Brawl podcast, brought to you by the Brawl Network. As always, I'm your host for this evening, Usaid Koshal. You can follow me on Twitter at Usaid Koshal. Go ahead and follow Mike Trainer on Twitter too at Mike Trainer MFT, and then don't forget to follow Anthony as well. You can follow him on Twitter at Anthony_Robardo. And then this week, we've got a great guest on. We know that it's officially time for the Daniel Jones era. So we figured let's bring on a former D1 quarterback to talk to us about his development. And we're really grateful that we could be joined by senior NFL draft analyst Jordan Reid. You can follow him on Twitter at JReidNFL. Jordan, how you doing today? Thanks for being on.
I'm good. Thank you guys for having me on.
And Anthony and Mike, how you guys doing?
I'm still pretty upset about, the tragic Kobe Bryant news. That really, it was such a tragedy. It killed my mood that day, and it's been a little tough. I was a big Kobe fan. I loved him, but, I'm ready to talk some football and try and get my mind off it and talk the Giants with you guys.
Yeah, 2020, man. Off to a terrible start, man. Kobe, Eli, I don't know what's going on, man. Hopefully it gets better.
Yeah, and so Jordan, we know obviously so Eli Manning's officially retired. You knew that his time with the Giants was coming to an end, specifically because they took Danny Dimes at 6th overall last year, and the rookie season was just filled with so much up and downs. But we got to know, what did you kind of see from him, during his rookie season?
I saw a player that played a lot better than what a lot of people was anticipating, and I'm not sure exactly how you guys felt, but everybody knows how the 6th overall pick, we know the chaos that ensued with taking Daniel Jones, but I thought he really surpassed a lot of people's expectations once you got past the, I would say, groupthink of taking him at the 6th overall pick, just because a lot of people thought that was a bit early for him. But personally, I did think it was a bit early for Daniel Jones. I think I had a mid first round grade on him, but of course we know just the value of the position. Quarterbacks are always going to be taken a bit earlier than what we anticipate. But as far as what he showed this year, I really like the poise that he showed from time to time. I think just dealing with the New York media and the atmosphere, of course, being in Eli Manning's shadow, we really didn't know how he was going to deal with that. But you get a guy that's really a carbon copy of what you call Eli Manning light, just from his demeanor to his playing style as well. So I thought it was a perfect fit. But I think the thing that he does need to work on is the turnovers. And I know you guys have seen that this year, just how he just had some careless moments. But that just comes with being a rookie quarterback. And I think that's something that he's going to build upon during his second year.
Yeah, the turnovers, we felt like, I know Anthony can kind of touch on that too. It's just like, I think the fumbles and really, I think the pocket presence was kind of a issue for him this year.
Yeah, I'd say I didn't think the interceptions were too big of a problem for him personally. I know he did have a few that were a bit confusing, but I thought mainly the fumbles were the main problem. There were times where he just didn't even know that the rush was coming and he would get hit, and that's the one that's concerning for me and for a lot of fans. And some people don't think that he's going to be able to improve that area. But what do you think, Jordan? Do you think that that is something that he can improve on?
Yeah, it's just a matter of having a natural feel of what's going on around you and just keeping two hands on the football. And that's something even going back to his Duke days where he was a bit careless with the ball, having one hand on the ball where guys were just able to swipe it out. But if you keep two hands on the ball, you can be a little bit stronger with it. And that's something that really has been a problem with him. But as long as he takes good coaching and he has a demanding position coach, which he does have with the Giants, I think that's something that he can improve upon. And that's something that we'll get into later as far as being able to protect him, as far as getting building a wall in front of him just to ensure if he does have that problem, let's minimize it a little bit by building up a protection in front of him.
Jordan, I agree and disagree with you, man. Like, listen, I agree. He's Eli 2.0, man. They got it right. For the next 15 years, he's going to do exactly what Eli did. Win 2 Super Bowls, maybe even more. But I disagree with you on one thing, man. You said too early. I think number 6 was the perfect time to get him because there was teams like Washington, even Miami, that they were looking probably to draft that dude before the Giants had that 17th pick, and end up getting Dexter Lawrence. But I believe he would have been gone.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree about that at all. But I'm just going on my draft grade and just my draft board. But like I said, with positional value, guys are always going to be pushed up the board, and we see that every single year. We're going to see it this year with some guys as well. And we'll never know exactly what the Redskins would have done there, or any other QB needy teams what they would have done there. And Dave Gettleman, we know he's a guy that's never going to trade back. He's going to stay true to his board, and he felt like Daniel Jones was worthy of the sixth overall pick. And I mean, he looks like the correct decision so far. But of course, you can't really grade these picks to 3-4+ years down the road. So we'll see.
Yeah, time will tell.
Yeah, and so I think just going off like Daniel Jones' development, I mean, it's interesting because we see a trend kind of going around the NFL where when young quarterbacks are in the second year with their respective teams. I mean, we've seen it with Mahomes. We saw it with Lamar Jackson. Carson Wentz, too, during his second season, was playing at an MVP level. So to take that true next step, Jordan, what do you think Danny Dimes has got to do?
Well, first, of course, you guys talked about it already. He has to take care of the football. And you can't play at the position at a high level if you're constantly turning the ball over. And we know with the Giants already not having a really good defense, he can't really put the team in bad situations like that just because they don't have the unit on the opposite side to get the ball back consistently. He's not in a situation like Patrick Mahomes or other guys of that nature where they had, well, I won't say Mahomes, but other rookie quarterbacks around the league where they had a strong defense to where he could lean upon a running game as well. He didn't really have that to his disposal, even though he does have Saquon Barkley behind him. They didn't really have a super strong running game just because of the offensive line. It didn't really play well in spurts. And we know the Giants' defense wasn't great from time to time either. But I think just getting him protection and just making him feel secure, I think that's going to help him a whole bunch. And we already know the talk of the town is taking the offensive tackle with the 4th overall selection, which I think is something that they should do. But we know with Dave Gettleman, it really is unpredictable on what he is going to do. But we know he's a guy that likes to build from the inside out. So they're going to have their pick of the litter as far as the tackle that they want at the 4th overall selection, whether that's a Jedrick Wills from Alabama, Andrew Thomas from Georgia, or even a Tristan Wirfs from Iowa, or even a guy that's really starting to ascend up boards now, Mekhi Becton, the big offensive tackle from Louisville. So they're going to have their pick of the litter. So I think just getting him protection, and I don't think they have to take a wide receiver early just because it's such a deep class. And I know wide receiver has been pegged upon the Giants very early. I just don't think they need to do that, especially in a deep class. I think they have some underrated weapons, and we see they found a guy like Darius Slayton in the 5th round last year. So I think Dave Gettleman is an underrated guy as far as evaluating talent. And I think they can find a guy maybe in the 3rd or 4th round that can come in immediately and help Daniel Jones as well.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, man. I've been saying that forever, man. And Gettleman, we trust, baby. Thank you, man. I finally found the guy that loves Gettleman. I love you, Jordan.
So, Jordan, you mentioned a few of those premier offensive tackle prospects, and I'm just wondering who was at the top of your list in terms of the offensive tackle prospects? What's the number one name on your board, and what separates him from the rest of the guys in the class?
So the top guy on my board right now is Tristan Wirfs from Iowa, and I'm a guy that just loves athletic offensive tackles just because it's just something I value, especially with the discrepancy between offensive and defensive linemen and the athleticism between all of them. You're seeing like some of these guys coming into the league like Nick Bosa, even last year. You need some guys that can keep up with the foot speed and some of the maturity that they're coming into with the league. So I value these athletic tackles, and Tristan Wirfs is by far the most athletic of the bunch. But I don't necessarily think the NFL is going to have the same line of thinking. So I think if I had to put money on it, I think Jedrick Wills probably would be the one that goes with the 4th overall selection. And I think it's going to be between him and Andrew Thomas as far as that 4th overall selection, just because Dave Gettleman really likes those road graders. And we know the term hog molly is something that he loves using, and both of those guys definitely fit the billing for that.
So I think they need to continue to kind of build that offensive core around him, and really investing in the trenches is one of the things that they really need to do, because the Giants' offensive line was just so atrocious this year. But like, what, in your opinion, I mean, like, what do you think is Daniel Jones' legitimate ceiling? I mean, I know because to me, like, player comparisons and kind of the ceiling are kind of two different things.
That's a really good question. I think he can probably be a top 12 quarterback. I think that's probably his ceiling. I don't think he'll ever crack the surface of being top 5 or top 8 or anything like that, which is okay, just because I don't think Eli was ever a top 5 quarterback at any point in his career, but he has such high variance of play throughout his career, and he got hot at the right time, and I think that's something that Daniel Jones definitely can do. And I don't think this team is necessarily truly far away, as a lot of people like to say. And I mean, they still had a chance to win the NFC East last year. As crazy as it seemed, there was a division that really was down last year. And I think the Eagles won it, and they won like 8 games or something like that this year. So I don't think the Giants are that far off. It's just a matter of getting the right positions in there. And I think that starts up front with the offensive line. But another position that I think they really need to address is linebacker. This team really hasn't had a stud linebacker in the middle for a very long time. And even though this isn't a very good class to find a linebacker, I think there are some that they can address, maybe in the second or even the third round, that I think could help.
There's one. Ant, say it, Ant. I know you think about that Clemson kid, man.
Yeah, I'm happy you mentioned linebacker, because a lot of Giants fans really want to see the Giants take Isaiah Simmons at number 4. What a versatile talent he is. And I'm wondering what you think of him and why you think that maybe going for a linebacker in the second or third round is a better option.
Simmons does scare me a little bit early on, just because he has a bit of a boomer bust attached to him. And I think outside of any prospect not named Jordan Love, I think Isaiah Simmons probably has the most boomer bust potential. I think it's a really good question, just because I think of any prospect, he has to landing spot is so huge for him, just because we've seen guys in a similar mold like him in years past. And some names that come to mind: Obi Melifonwu, Mark Barron, and some of these hybrid linebackers that we've seen in years past. And what you notice is that they bounce around the league so often, just because they weren't able to find that match with a defensive coordinator that knows how to utilize them. Now, that's not to say that Simmons won't be a fit with the Giants, but you have to have a guy attached at the hip with him as far as a creative defensive coordinator. Otherwise, they'll just get lost in the shuffle. So that's one of my worries with Simmons. And I don't necessarily think you have to take him at 4. I think you can get a guy like a Patrick Queen in the second round that I think can have a similar type of effect, even though he's not going to wear as many hats as Simmons does. I think he can have a similar type of effect in the middle.
So for me, Patrick Queen's kind of interesting, because I know you guys over at TDN just seem to be higher on Queen than just like a lot of other people that kind of do scouting are. So what kind of stands out to you about Queen when you compare him to the other guys in this class?
Well, it's all about upside with Queen. You have to understand that he's only 20 years old, so he's still really just trying to figure this thing out. And he didn't even start at the beginning of the year, so that just goes to show you how he's still trying to figure things out. But you talk about he's not a big guy, but he's very explosive, and he's a ball magnet, I like to say, and he's still trying to figure things out. And that's the type of guy you want in the middle of your defense, just because I'm all about upside with linebackers and guys that are still trying to figure things out. And I'm going to take a guy that's 20 years old and put him in the middle of my defense and let him grow with this young core. And the one thing that we know about a Dave Gettleman defense is that he's going to have big guys up front that is going to keep these second-level guys clean. And a guy like Dexter Lawrence can keep a guy like Patrick Queen clean that isn't necessarily good as far as deconstructing off of blocks and things of that nature, but you have these big guys up front that can help him stay clean. So I think Queen will be a really good fit for some of those reasons.
So right now, I'm just curious to know, I mean, do you have like a second round grade on Queen, just because the upside? I mean, I think because I've watched some of his tape, right? And I think like his upside, I think, is definitely tremendous. But, obviously these NFL teams, it's like they view every prospect differently.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a mid-second round grade on Queen right now, but he's a guy we're going to see shoot up boards just because he's going to test really well. I actually was surprised that he declared, honestly, but he's one guy I actually was late on just because he didn't start this year. I didn't really get to highlight him much or detail him much on that LSU defense, just because there was a lot more important guys as far as high caliber guys. But a lot of people are starting to catch up to Queen a little bit now just because he was a late declaration and he is so young. But I think he's a guy that definitely is going to be in the first round conversation before it's all said and done, just because he's going to test through the roof at the combine.
So, just speaking of the combine, it's honestly one of my favorite events of the year, because it really it's at that point where you really get a feel for how you can make predictions of the million different ways that the dominoes could fall, especially in the first round, and then sometimes even well beyond that. But like, so the Senior Bowl was last week, and we know that Michigan. I know that for a fact. Like, so Michigan edge rusher Josh Uche was, I think, one of the biggest guys down there that improved his stock. But this time, this like week long period that's in Indy, guys have another chance to really improve their stock, right? So just who are some of the guys, like I know you mentioned Patrick Green's one, but who are other guys that you see significantly shooting up the board?
Another guy, Jedrick Wills, of course, that I talked about from Alabama. He's a guy I definitely think could shoot up boards, even though he's a bit more popular on draft Twitter as far as, a guy that's already been pegged in the top 10. And we haven't seen him a whole bunch this offseason just because he is an underclassman. So he's not as visible as some of these seniors that we saw at the Senior Bowl and some of these other natures. And Josh Uche is a guy that you highlighted. I mean, seeing him in person last week, man, he was just incredible. I wasn't expecting him to be as athletic and as fluid as he is at 6'1", 240 pounds. I mean, he was running down the field with running backs and these one-on-one drills and also tight ends as well. So Uche is definitely one guy that I think could shoot up boards. But I think the biggest surprise of the Senior Bowl was just seeing how well these small school guys stacked up against the competition. Ben Bartch, the left tackle from St. John's, Minnesota, was just incredible, just coming from a D3 level of competition. And I mean, he was going head to head, locking horns with guys like Terrell Lewis from Alabama and Anthony Jennings from Alabama as well. So just seeing how well the small school guys played. Adam Troutman, the tight end from Dayton, is another guy that definitely has a chance to shoot up boards as well, depending on how he runs. And I came out with an article today on the Draft Network, and I talked to a couple scouts about him, and they compared him to Dallas Goedert. I think he could be a better version than what they saw of him coming out of South Dakota State. So just seeing these small school guys, and I think they have the biggest chance to shoot up boards. But as far as some other prospects that I think definitely could shoot up boards, you name one in Uche that I think could be in contention for maybe even an early second round grade for me, and a guy like Jedrick Wills that could stamp his status as a top 10 selection.
What about even like the quarterbacks? It seems like they're moving the board too. Like, I mean, you could get guys going 1, 2, and 3, and that leaves the Giants a possibility. I think, you wrote about that Chase Young could be there for the Giants. Like, that actually happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It looks like Burrow and, Tua could be 2, 3.
Yeah, it just really depends on what the Redskins want to do at 2. But I think the team that's in the best spot at the draft right now is the Lions at 3, just because it's really a common consensus right now. And even though it's a long way into April, a lot of stuff can change. We know that Joe Burrow is probably going to go number 1. The Redskins probably are locked in on Chase Young at 2, but there's already some chatter that maybe they're not sold on Dwayne Haskins and maybe they could take Tua.
Right.
So it's going to be a lot of rumors that come out, guys. But the Detroit Lions, I don't think they're going to take a quarterback just because of the pressure on Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn to really win next year in 2020, or they're out. So I think they may trade back, and I think that's the prime spot of where we could see a Sam Darnold-like situation when the Jets traded up to the Colts pick. I think they could get maybe even a couple first-round picks and a second-round pick. If I think they're sitting on it, they can get a king's ransom for that pick. So I think the draft definitely starts with the 3rd overall pick, but somebody's going to slide to the Giants at 4. So the Giants are in a really good spot as well.
Yeah, just going back to the small school players. So we had Jim Nagy on the NFL Brawl last week, which is another one of our podcasts. And he mentioned, and I think what Jim's done an excellent job of just trying to make the Senior Bowl a platform for a lot of these these smaller school players. Because it's like, we know you're going to get over there and you're going to have the guys that are like playing in the Big Ten or the Pac-12, etc. But those smaller school D3 guys, I mean, did you get a chance to watch the safety from Lenore Ryan at all, Kyle Duggar?
I did. I actually went to see him play live this year when they played against Carson Newman. So I have been very familiar with him coming into the event. And a lot of people don't really understand how fluid this guy was at 6'5", 215 pounds. I mean, if you went out and you looked at the Senior Bowl practices and you replaced his helmet, his Lenore Ryan helmet, with the Michigan or Alabama helmet, you wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. That's how well he played down to the Senior Bowl event. I mean, he was out there striking people. He was out there looking very fluid in coverage, and he really looked the part. So I was really happy to see that from him. But I put a big grade on him prior to the event, and he made me look really good just because I was hyping him up a little bit going into the event. So I was really happy to see him play well. And a scout actually told me that he reminds him a little bit of Keanu Neal when he was coming out of Florida. So I like that comparison a lot. as far as what he brings to the table. So look for him to be a top 50 selection just because I think he's going to run 4.4 plus at the combine. He's probably going to jump 38, 39 or even better in the vertical as well. So I think he's going to test really well.
So we've mentioned a lot of small school talent that were labeled risers over at the Senior Bowl, and I'm wondering about one big school talent, KJ Hill. I know he had a great week at the Senior Bowl, and I'm wondering where do you see him projecting in the rounds, and what's your grade on him, and could he be a fit for the Giants later in the draft?
Definitely. I got an early fourth on him right now, and he was incredible at the event as well. And we've seen guys like Terry McLaurin last year where these Ohio State receivers are just able to naturally separate. And we know separation is just king in the NFL. And if you're not able to do that in the NFL, you really don't have a future. But we see how mature these Ohio State receivers are coming into the event. And it wasn't just KJ Hill. Austin Mack looked incredible as well, who was the team's fourth receiver last year. So KJ Hill, a guy I have an early fourth round grade on right now. But I think the thing that was most impressive about KJ Hill's week is that it was nothing he did as a receiver. It was what he did as a special teams guy as well. And kudos to Brian Hartline in that he has these guys well prepared, not just as route runners, but just providing value in every way that they can. KJ Hill played gunner during the week, and he gave full out effort during that as well. And I think the way he fits into the Giants, I think he definitely could fit in admirably just because they're not going to take a receiver early. And I don't think they need to take a receiver early just because I think this is a very loaded class. I think they could come out with a guy late day 2 or early day 3 that really could help contribute to this team immediately.
Right, and the receiver class is so it's interesting this year because I mean you could theoretically go ahead and I'd say reach for someone at 4, but this team they have far more pressing needs, and I like how I totally agree with what you're saying there. It's like even if they decide to trade back from 4, they can still land an impact player if they trade back like 2 or 3 spots because we know it's going to be like a 4th or 5th straight year of run on quarterbacks early. And then when it comes to the receiver, don't panic with it because someone's eventually going to fall to you that at first, the fans may be like, oh, okay, what's up with this? But when you actually get him out on the field, I think, you're going to see more and more of all right, this guy's a hidden gem.
Definitely. I mean, if you go back and look at the receiver class from last year, I mean, we didn't see one guy taken until the 25th pick, I believe it was, with Marquise Brown. And then just look at all the guys that are contributing this year. Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin. You're seeing all these guys go on day 2 and day 3. So I think receiver, I wouldn't say it's essentially starting to become like running back where you really can find them anywhere during the draft, but teams aren't really valuing them as high or early on in the draft unless they're a guy like a Julio Jones or a AJ Green. They're just this transcendent talent. We're just not seeing that type of receiver coming into the league anymore just because of these high-powered offenses in college, and teams are spreading the wealth so much. So you're starting to see a lot of distribution of these receivers, and they're putting up these gaudy numbers to where you're seeing guys so mature coming into the league. So teams really aren't valuing them as high.
Do you see any potential transcendent talents in the first round of this year's draft at wide receiver? Maybe a Jerry Jeudy or a CeeDee Lamb?
Not like a Julio Jones or anything like that. I like Jeudy and I like CD. And if I was a GM, I probably wouldn't take a receiver in the first round this year just because I can double up on the 2 guys in the second or third round and get that similar type of production that I can get as opposed to spending that first round pick on a guy like a Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, or Henry Ruggs or anything like that. Like I can get Jalen Reagor in the second round and get the same type of production that I can get out of Henry Ruggs. I can get a Michael Pittman Jr. or a Denzel Mims and get the similar, or maybe not the same type of flash plays, but maybe similar production that I get out of CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy. So I wouldn't be in a hurry to take a receiver in the first round. That's why I say the Giants, they're sitting in a really good spot just because they can get a guy on the second or third day of the draft that can come in right away and be an immediate contributor.
Watch one of those wide receivers slip to New England late in the first round, man.
I agree. I would not doubt that.
Yeah, I'm so, kind of off topic here, but I'm so torn about who to mock with, to the Patriots at 32 because something just tells me that someone like Troutman's gonna be there and they're gonna end up selecting him.
Yeah, and one guy that I actually do like a lot currently is Cole Kmet, the tight end from Notre Dame, a guy that really hasn't gotten a whole bunch of love just because he was expected to go back to Notre Dame initially. He actually said he was going to go back, but a lot of people actually have him as their top ranked tight end. But he's a really good player. Reminds you a lot of Kyle Rudolph coming out of Notre Dame. A guy that isn't the fleetest of foot, but he's very agile as far as climbing above the rim and snagging the passes out of the air. He's a very well seasoned blocker as well. Very well rounded game. So I could definitely see Komet going to a team like the Patriots.
Yeah, we talked last week about how so the Giants, we know they've got Evan Ingram, Caden Smith, who they picked up off the 49ers practice squad or something, right? He he flashed potential, but we just got so intrigued with those two tight end sets because we know Joe Judge, this guy's coming from that Patriots tree where before all the Aaron Hernandez stuff kind of went down, they were so dominant running those two tight end sets. So makes me wonder, okay, at that 36th overall pick, could this team potentially go with a tight end to pair up with Ingram and Caden Smith?
Definitely, they could, and I don't really like to see Ingram as a tight end. He's like a big wide receiver to me, just because you don't really want him inline blocking a whole bunch. You don't want to make a living off doing that, just because his bread is really buttered as far as in the receiving game and the passing game. That's really where you're going to get the most value from him. But a guy like Cole Kmet definitely could come in and be an instant contributor. Adam Troutman is another name that we've talked about a lot. So we know Joe Judge is going to run a lot of 12 personnel in these two tight end sets. He wants to operate off of play action and, just getting Daniel Jones out of the pocket as well and using his athleticism a little bit as well, just because I think the running game is going to be a bit better just because of the heavy personnel sets that he wants to use. So we'll see what happens, but it would not surprise me if they do take a tight end early.
It's so this team, so they're picking at 4th, they're picking at 36. They got a 3rd from that, from the Leonard Williams trade. And so I think when you kind of look at this coming off season, like I mentioned earlier, and we talked about extensively, it's going to be about building around Danny Jones, but they also need to kind of go ahead and pay attention to defensive side of the ball, because it's there's a couple linebackers that you mentioned could be really good bets. And this team, like you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of holes, right? So why do you think that they're not so far away from competing?
Well, it's the NFC East, and we know it's a division that really is from top to bottom. It seems to be even to me, and we know the Eagles are hyped up every year, and they have a really loaded roster, but they've been very inconsistent. Washington is rebuilding. We don't know what's going to go on with that situation. They still have a young quarterback with a very talented defense. And the Cowboys, we know they're unpredictable every year, even though they're going to win at least 8 games, but we don't know. They have a new coach. We don't know how McCarthy is going to come in there and instill things. They're going to be in a transition year as well, but we'll see. Joe Judge is really a huge mystery. I know that his hiring caught a lot of people by surprise. Most people were saying who, and I was saying the same thing. I really don't know much about the guy, but let's see what he does. Let's see how he works. A special teams guy. He could end up being another John Harbaugh, another special teams guy that came in. A lot of people really didn't know his name outside of his last name. They really didn't know how it was going to work. But I like when teams hire special teams coaches, just because they really get to sit back and be the CEO of the entire operation. They don't really focus on one side of the ball, offense or defense. They really stay in their domain with special teams, but they can be an entire CEO of the operation. So let's see what he does with the offense. Let's see what he does with the defense and how Dave Gettleman continues to retool this team. But a lot of people are saying the Giants are very far off, and I just don't really agree with that, even though there's mixed reviews and mixed opinions about Dave Gettleman. And I'm a fan of Dave Gettleman, the talent evaluator. Now, I think the one flaw that Gettleman does have is that he just values highly the wrong positions. I will say that. But as far as the talent that he is bringing to the team, I definitely think he has done a great job.
Yeah, I think you just became like Mike's best friend there, mentioning that, you love Dave Gettleman. We know we're approaching that 30-minute mark, right? So do you guys, before we get Jordan out of here, you guys have any last-minute questions for him?
Yeah, real quick. I live in Florida, so I'm a Giants fan, but I am a little intrigued by the Miami Dolphins, and I've got a lot of friends who are Dolphins fans, and I'm just wondering, what do you think they're going to do? Are they going to trade up, or are they going to stay put and get a quarterback, or what do you think they're going to do?
So remember I was saying that the draft really starts at the Lions with the 3rd overall pick. I think there's going to be a race to get to that pick, and we've already seen the Chargers come out and say they're moving on from Phillip Rivers. They sit with the 6th overall pick, and then we have the Panthers at 7. We don't know what they're going to do as far as with Cam Newton and then the Dolphins at the 5th overall pick. So we have back-to-back-to-back picks that need quarterbacks. So I think it's going to be a race to trade up to that 3rd overall spot. And I think there's probably already preliminary conversations going on between those 3 teams and the Detroit Lions, and they're really auctioning off the pick. Now, I don't have any sources or anything behind that, but that's just a sneaky suspicion of what's going on. But as far as a team that really has an admirable position, I think it is the Miami Dolphins. I think they're sitting on a king's ransom. You have 14 draft picks, I believe it was this year, and you have 120 million plus in cap room. So you really can't ask for a better situation. You get to build your team from scratch. You have a great leader in place in Brian Flores that somehow got 5 wins out of a roster that really was stripped down to the studs last year. So I think they're in a great situation. Now, the hard part comes with them cashing in on these picks. It's always nice to have these a bunch of fancy draft picks and then all this cap, but you have to figure out a way to cash in on all of that stuff. So they're in a good situation, but the hard part comes down to where they have to cash in with all these picks and all this cap space.
Jordan, I got a question for you. As a guy that loves Gettleman almost as much as I do, where do you think like all the hate comes from to him, man? Like it seems to me like the media is all against him. Like all I see Gettleman does is make pretty decent draft picks. A couple, trades like Jonathan Stewart, that 1 year, 2 year deal. I know he wanted to give Barkley some veteran leadership, so I kind of understand that. But what's the hate coming from? Is it just the media?
Yeah, I think it's just the archaic style that he has, and you guys have heard about how he thinks of analytics, and I think he called them like computer guys or something like that. So yeah. I think it's the whole analytical side of it and how he's just kind of a bit archaic with that. And he's just a guy that's just about his weight. Even when he was with the Carolina Panthers, he's just not big into some of those things. And even though he's a bit stubborn with transitioning to the newer side of things, I think him just kind of being stuck in his ways, I think that's why he gets so much media hate.
All right.
All right, Jordan. Well, we'll get you out of here. Thanks for coming on again tonight.
No problem. Thank you guys for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks a ton, Jordan.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so that was Jordan Reid of the Draft Network. You can follow him on Twitter at JReidNFL. And before we get into the second half of our show here, we got to remind you guys, look, there's a hell of a lot of great deals going on Fanatics, all right? Go get yourself a hoodie. Go get yourself an Eli Manning jersey, because those, even though those still will not be dirt cheap, you'll find a great deal like 70% off of shipping if you use one of their promo codes that they're always going to have. But be sure you support our network by using Fanatics. Go to www.thebearsbrawl.com/Fanatics. Guys, that was an excellent, just like 35-minute session with Jordan. He really, I think, gave some great insight into what this team needs to do kind of going into the offseason.
Yeah, no, that was really awesome. I'm so happy that we were able to have Jordan on. That's my favorite writer over at the Draft Network. That's one of my favorite websites for football news in general, and obviously draft news. And I'm really appreciative and grateful that he was able to come on. And I thought he gave an awesome interview and answered some great questions. And I'm really happy about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, man. I thought he was pretty good, man. He knows his stuff. The only thing I disagree with was the Daniel Jones. At 6. If it was me, I would have drafted him number 1. But the list, it's me, guys. But it's good, man. He knows his stuff, bro.
Yeah, it's crazy. We'd be foolish to kind of record this podcast just 2 days after the passing of Kobe Bryant. Our thoughts and prayers obviously out with Kobe. That was so tragic, right? Because, okay, I get we're a Giants podcast, but, let's be real. You can't go through if there's one athlete that I think had a tremendous impact on any sport in the U.S. in the 21st century, it's hands down got to be Kobe, right? Because it wasn't about, who the basketball player. It was also about, just who the person he was, and just, the way that he was a role model for so many people.
Yeah, you mentioned the impact that he had on basketball in the U.S., and he really just goes so far beyond that. Kobe was a legend all over the world. He was a global icon. In China, in Italy, he's big everywhere. And like you said, he was a role model. And we'd be remiss to not mention, the other 8 people that lost their lives. Rest in peace to all of them, too, including Kobe's 13-year-old daughter, Gianna. And it's really just, it's a tragedy, and it's devastating and so upsetting. And what really it hurts me to see so many people hurting, because the outreach that he had, the impact that he had, it's everybody, everyone you see on Twitter and Instagram, everyone's in pain over this. And that more than anything brings me pain, is just seeing how many people were hurt by this tragic event. And it's it's unbelievable. I really couldn't believe it when I read it. And like I said, condolences with all the family, friends, loved ones of Kobe Bryant and the other 8 people who lost their lives, and may they all rest in peace.
Absolutely
Yeah.
terrible situation, man. It's unfortunate. When my friends would text me, Kobe died, Kobe died. I'm like, the first thing I was like, what? And then I'm thinking like it had to be some kind of crash. Never thought it'd be like a helicopter crash. And apparently the reason he was, taking helicopters because the LA traffic. Fix your traffic over there, fellas. He wouldn't have to be going up in a friggin' helicopter. Trying to get to his daughter's game. Um, really, it's scary, man. I mean, you couldn't pay me to get in one of those things. I know people go to Vegas and go to like the canyon and take rides over there. I would never jump in one of those things, man. But unfortunately, life happens.
Well, no, and so, one of the things that pissed me off the most, right, was like there were just so many people, like, so you get the announcement, and then like just seemed like everyone kind of became like a friggin' professional journalist and had just had a damn opinion on it. And it's like, yo, shut up. Let the people that actually have like knowledge of the situation, like the folks that, because it was ABC LA that reported it, and then Wojnarowski came out with it, and it was like, yo, just shut the hell up. Let the people that like have this, like, are professional journalists and that will know people close to situations, let those guys work the phones instead of just like trying to spread your own damn agenda or whatever.
Yeah, I'm happy you mentioned that, because there was a lot of hasty and lazy reporting going on, especially when initial reports were coming out and we heard only 3 people or 4 people died, and we heard that every single one of Kobe's daughters were lost in the crash, and that was just so devastating and heartbreaking for me and for so many people to read. And I'm very grateful that that's not true, that not all 4 of his daughters were lost, but it doesn't it's still, there were a lot of lives lost, 9 of them. And the lazy reporting created triple the extra chaos and fear. And the media just needs to be better, all around. Everyone needs to do better, and that's really just how I feel about it. Yeah.
Not just like lazy reporting. What do you guys think about like the other people like on Twitter or social media, whatever, that are going on, bringing up rape allegations at a time like
Okay.
this? I
Yes.
hate to play devil's advocate here, but I think it's something we should probably talk about, in respect.
I mean, yeah, so for me, right, it's like kind of tough because here's the thing, right? These professional athletes, it's like, look, we view them through the lens of like, oh, professional athlete, whether it's like Kobe, LeBron, Klum, Eli Manning, whoever it is, right, in any sport, it's like they're athletes, but they're also people. So like this guy, I mean, a whole bunch of people just lost their lives that were all athletes on that helicopter. So I'm not gonna sit here, right? Like I would never do that of like, be going to someone's funeral or something, and be like, oh, well, this dude did like all this, and this bad stuff. Like I get it's a part of their past, but hey, they're no longer here, so you got to like be respectful.
Yeah, exactly. And I won't talk too much on that situation, the allegations, because that's a little bit before my time. I was really young when that happened, so I don't know too much about the situation, though I do know like enough that I think I need to know. But regardless of it, I don't think when a global icon passes away, the first thing that anyone should be doing is trying to tear the man's legacy apart. I think it's not only disrespectful to the man's legacy, but as we mentioned, how many people were hurting from this and how many loved ones he had. And is all of those people don't need to see that when they're grieving and mourning a tragic loss. And I think that's really the main reason why the people who are bringing that up during this time need to reevaluate themselves and check themselves and see the pain. They're just adding on to the pain that so many people are feeling. And I don't know why people would want to bring more pain to someone in a time like this.
What about TMZ? Like I heard the report that they actually reported, him and his daughter dying before, his wife found out. How could that be? How could TMZ exist or live with themselves, just to get that story out right away and be the first?
That's again, like we talked about, just hasty and lazy reporting, and it's irresponsible reporting more than anything in that situation because, you know, they shouldn't have been notified of anything until everything was confirmed by the coroner and the sheriff department had finished its investigation. Then Vanessa and, Kobe's loved ones, then they should find out about it. But really, it's inappropriate that fans found out about it first because we happened to be on Twitter when TMZ released their scoop and juicy article or whatever they felt they were doing. It is irresponsible and it's gross. You make a good point, Mike.
Anyway, yo, Mike, speaking of which, where's Barkley at? Because we're going to move on here, but rest in peace to Kobe and the Kobe, Gigi, the Altobello family. But speaking of which, man, where's Barkley at? Because you didn't bring him on the show last week.
Barkley's been napping, man. It was like 9 o'clock, he's sleeping. So I could go wake him up before this podcast ends. When we start talking about Eli, I might have to leave the room anyway to wipe away some tears, so I might bring back my pup.
But yeah, anyway, so that guys, Eli press conference on Friday morning. Okay, so it was, like I said, once they drafted Danny Dimes, you knew that at some point, like, they were gonna move on from Eli, or he was just gonna straight up retire. So like I said, I saw this coming, and it's like all good things must come to an end. But like, just what were some of your takeaways, guys, from that press conference?
Well, the main takeaway is he said it best himself. Once a giant, only a giant. Eli Manning is a definition of what it means to be a New York Giant. He always handled himself with class and dignity, and he was a true. I wrote about this on Empire Sports Media. Go check it out. It was a very personal piece for me because I have a very strong personal connection with Eli Manning, and he was a role model. My father is a huge part of my life, but you don't learn everything from your parents. Sometimes you have to find other role models in life and other figures. And Eli always kind of, to me, since I'm 18, he was in the league for 16 years, felt like a second father figure, like a major role model in my life. And I'm just really appreciative and grateful of everything that he did, not only on the field, but off the field too. I think that's just as important, if not more. And, his speech was beautiful. I loved it. When he said, "You guys are unique fans and I love you," I said, "I love you too, champ." And I started crying. I mean, I couldn't help it, man. I mean, we are unique fans and we didn't always support him like we should have, but he always was there with class and dignity, and we'll always love and respect him. And just thank you, Eli.
Yeah, man, it was definitely bittersweet, man. Seeing him like retire, man. You just like think he'd play forever. Like the biggest thing, like, yeah, a lot of people didn't support him is like, first couple years in the league. And I remember when he won his first Super Bowl, there was just like him standing alone just seemed like he took a deep breath and he was just like relieved that if that happened, that he had that monkey off his back, and, years later he would win another one. And then, he had such great things to say during the press conference about the organization. He kept bringing that up, like people that work there, just like him and his dad, like they picked the right spot. Because, imagine like, them not liking San Diego that much. And you see what happened with Phillip Rivers the past couple of days. Like, they're trying to push him out the door. And, like, he's not even getting a press conference like Eli did. Like, why would you want to go work there? So they got it right, man. And, we got it right by taking Eli.
Yeah, and especially, like, so Phillip Rivers, so when the Chargers made, like, the move to LA, I think it was, like, last spring or like 2 years ago, but whatever, right? Phillip Rivers was straight up like, yo, my biggest regret wasn't like, not winning enough games or whatever, right? It was, or not doing enough as a quarterback. It was just the fact that we weren't able to like bring a Super Bowl back to the city of San Diego. And I think like, so the deal with Mike, you touched on the whole situation with like Eli and Super Bowl 42. Like, let's be real. I mean, this dude came into the league in '04. Peyton came into the league in like 96 or like the late 90s, right? So like he was always living in Peyton's shadow, and like for Eli to finally arrive on the scene, like he did the unthinkable. Like people will argue and whatnot and be like, well, he isn't a Hall of Fame quarterback because of the 500, 117, 117 record. But like this dude knocked off what would have been, or what was going to be like the second undefeated team in NFL history. And like I think at that point, like when he got the Lombardi that night, it was like at that moment you knew like, yo, the legend of Eli's arrived.
Dude, he had the greatest play in Super Bowl history, getting out of that pocket and throwing that ball like where only Tyree could catch it. Sure, it got stuck to his helmet, but it was right there. Like it was right there. And I think people like get upset like because he won it that way. And but I tell you, man, you're right, man. To beat the undefeated Patriots like that, man. Come on, man. There was no better Super Bowl than that, man. I couldn't believe it. I still like to this day, like I'll watch it once in a while. I still can't believe that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that's the greatest play in Super Bowl history, but I think Eli also owns the greatest throw in Super Bowl history in Super Bowl 46. That throw to Mario Manningham down the left sideline, you put that a foot further, it's a pick. You put it a foot to the right, it's a pick. A foot underthrown, it might be a pick, it's definitely incomplete, and if it's a foot to the left, it's out of bounds. It was in the perfect spot, and it was just, I mean, I think that's the best throw in Super Bowl history. It was, the game on the line, last drive. We needed that play, and he made that throw. And I think that's part of the legendary career that he had, and he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, those were both of those, like the throw to Manningham, the throw to David Tyree, like those were both big boy throws. But like you know what I really loved about Eli, right? So is at the press conference on Friday, I mean, this was towards the beginning of his speech. And by the way, if you missed the press conference or you want to recap it, just go ahead and search Eli Manning retirement press conference. It's all over YouTube. So what stuck out to me, guys, is he was like, "Oh, from day one, like I did it the Eli Manning way." I think he said something like that. And what stuck out to me there wasn't the fact that like, all right, so he's doing it like things his own way. The fact that he was just like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna be myself. Just be yourself, and like you'll do great things."
Yeah, the media, like, and everybody was like, "Oh no, you got to be this way. You got to act a certain way." You remember hearing that, guys, right when he first came up? Like, why are you so quiet? Why can't you be like the rah rah guy? People wanted him to be different, and he stuck to his guns, man, and he proved everybody wrong.
Right, yeah. And I remember Tiki Barber was saying that they couldn't win with him because he wasn't vocal enough or whatever, and then they won the Super Bowl the next year. And that's the Eli way to me. And like you said, Usaid, he just be yourself and you can do great things. Again, that's another one of these life lessons that Eli Manning taught me. And like I said, he was such a role model to me, and I'm forever grateful for him.
Leaving Giant Stadium, a quick story, man. Leaving Giant Stadium, I was yelling at Tiki Barber. I was like, "F you, Tiki," walking out the thing, but it turned out to be his brother Rondé Barber that was doing the game. I'm not Tiki. He started yelling. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, so I was watching all the Eli highlights during lunch today, and it was so it was interesting because like those times where you would see like the snapshots or whatever, or like the 2 second like TV windows where he would have kind of like a pissed off like straight face look. Those stuck out to me because other people would have been like, "Oh yeah, this guy's like pissed off and isn't a good leader or whatever." When in reality, you could just tell the entire look on his face was basically like, "Yo, what the hell are we doing? Like, we have a game to win. Let's figure this thing out."
Yeah, the classic Eli face. And of course, he would sometimes have those angry looks, but he'd have some looks that, I couldn't even help but just laugh at and crack up. I mean, sometimes he would just make the funniest faces, man.
Yeah, the haters, my friends that are haters of Eli, they used to call it stupid face. And I just laugh all the time. Like, stupid face got 2 Super Bowls, man. What do you guys got?
True that.
Wait, hold on. So your friends, right? What fan base, like what team do they identify with or
Oh,
root
God.
for?
Listen, you know G Steele, like he does the Chicago Brawl. He's
Yeah.
a Bears fan, so we watch the games a lot. So I got to deal with his shit. My other friend Mike's a Washington fan. I got a couple guys that are Dallas fans that are all around me, like because they're pretty much like everywhere. So it's just like getting Jet fans, obviously being in New York, man. You get all that. I'm like, you guys don't win shit anyway.
Yeah.
But you deal with it. You deal with it up here, man. It's just, but that's football, man. That's what being a fan is, and getting into arguments and with your close friends.
Right, man, that's great. And like you mentioned, you got some Cowboys fans. I have a couple too, and of course, like I said earlier, yeah, they're the worst. I think Eagles fans are the worst, but Cowboys fans are pretty bad. But I've also got a lot of Dolphins friends or friends who are Dolphins fans, and anytime any of them say like, "Oh, Eli sucks," he whatever, 2 lucky Super Bowls. I'll always say like, if they're so lucky, how come in your lifetime, since you're 18 years old, you haven't seen your team win one? I've seen my team win 2, so thank you very much. That's my quarterback.
Yeah, Dan Marino. They go in with Dan Marino. Come on.
Yeah, right? Like as if my friend 18-year-old knows much about Dan Marino, right?
Yeah, okay, so anyways, right? Those Cowboys fans are so annoying. Like okay, so if you had to have like an NFL like power rankings by like most annoying fan bases, like in my opinion, okay, so Cowboys would be up there at number 1. Or like the Cowboys and Packers, right? And the Eagles, like those and Patriots. Yeah,
Eagles
those would.
number one. I can't stand them. I hate going there. I hate everything about them. I hate their team. Yeah, you said it right, man. They're disgusting. They're all disgusting. I hate all of them.
Okay, so you know what I
Me
found out
too.
about
Me too.
the
Eagles fans are the worst. My number one. I can't stand them. I've never had like any pleasant encounters with them. They're just so mean and nasty. I can't stand it, man.
They throw batteries at you. You go there
Yeah.
with a different jersey. I'm like, dude.
Oh, I don't think I can ever go to that stadium, man. I don't think I'll ever go.
It's not even the AAA batteries. It's those big D batteries that you can't find anymore. You get thrown at your head, man. I hate
All
that.
right. So our guy Mark Lowbridge, he's the former scout and agent that headlines the NFL Brawl, and he played linebacker for the Eagles for a couple of years. And I swear to God, so he told me, he's like, yeah, if you go to Philly, what you're gonna have to do is if they catch you wearing another team's gear, like they're gonna run you out of town, which shows how much they suck. But also get this, so like great like every fan base, right? Like so I live like a couple of miles from the United Center here in Chicago, and they got like a full statue of Michael Jordan up. And then one of the hockey players, Stan Mikita, I think his name is, and then the like couple miles from Soldier Field where the Bears play, they got statues of like Walter Payton and George Halas. Now I found out in Philly, Wilt Chamberlain's like the most notable athlete to roll through that town in like the last 60 years because he set so many NBA records. But they don't have a statue of him. But guess who they do have a statue of?
Jay
Who?
Cutler.
No, Rocky Balboa. Like the only statue that they apparently got is a friggin' fictional
It's a
movie
movie.
character.
Dude, that's the only statue they got in that dump, man. I hate it. I hate going there. It's so stupid. It's a movie. It's a friggin' movie. Only reason I said Jay Cutler because Jay Cutler, dude, it's a very Cavalieri show on TV, like on the E Network, and Jay Cutler's just in the background walking around. If you guys haven't watched it, watch it, man, because it's awesome. I know you're a Bears fan, so man, you can just watch the show, man. It's great.
Okay, so yeah, Bears fan, but the Giants are always my second team. But like, okay, so getting back to Eli before we wrap this thing up, right? So I felt like Cutler was another dude who just like had all the talent in the world, but like throughout the later some parts of his career, like they did not build, like the Bears just didn't build a good team around him. And I feel like the same argument applies to Eli. Like I saw this one tweet from the moron on Twitter, Sports Talk Barry, right? Yeah, I called you publicly, called you out, Barry. I don't care. But like, okay, so he put together a list, right? And he's like, oh, Eli's only made the playoffs like 3 times and all these other times he's missed. And it's like, let's be real though. Like, I'm not going to blame this guy because like Jerry Reese just could not draft correctly. Like Jerry Reese, right? This dude did not sustain drafting like past 2010, I want to say.
Right, for over like 10 years, where he couldn't draft anybody. It was pathetic. He drafted Odell Beckham, and look what he did. He was just a mess for us after a while. You're right, 100% right.
Yeah, 100% right. I mean, Jerry Reese didn't put any of the right pieces around Eli for the majority of his career. He never had a strong offensive line, only once or twice, did he? And he didn't even have a good offensive line for the 2011-2012 Super Bowl. Those guys really weren't performing that well, and he really just carried the team there. I don't know. I think when you've got two magical, historic Super Bowl runs and you're in the league for 16 years, he's a Hall of Famer to me, man. I might have some bias, but I think I just couldn't see it any other way.
It's a team sport, fellas. You know, they need help, man. Can't just rely on one guy. It's not basketball where some guy could drop 50 like Kobe used to do.
Yeah, and so here's the thing, right? Like, if we're gonna sit there and be like, okay, accomplishments are the reason that you should get into Canton, Ohio, like, I'm gonna be pretty confident in saying, like, okay, I know Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees are like surefire Hall of Famers, but like, if you're gonna base it off accomplishments, like, who do you think would get the upper nod? Like, assuming you don't know the names of Eli and Rodgers and Brady, like, take the names out of it for a second. If a list was put in front of you of the guys won 2 Super Bowls, or like these other two that have won 1 and may have MVPs, but Eli also has 2 Super Bowl MVPs, like, I'd go with the dude that's won 2 all day, you know. And not saying like Rodgers and Brees are gonna get in, but still, Eli's accomplished more in certain categories than those guys have, to be honest.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And like, if I were to look back over the past, decade or so, and I wouldn't have rather had Rodgers instead of Eli, because at the end of the day, we're football fans. What do we want to see our team do is win Super Bowls. And Eli's won 2 of them with the Giants. I wouldn't give that up for one with Rodgers plus a couple league MVPs. It's a team sport, like you said, Mike, and that's all we care about is getting rings.
Absolutely.
So, Mike, like, over or under on the number of Super Bowls that Danny Dimes is winning? I mean, what's your over under on that?
You know, I was thinking about this before. I was just like, I don't know, scrolling through Twitter. I came across Ariana Grande's song 7 Rings. And I'm like, that sounds about right, man. I could see over 7, baby. Let's get it. Danny Dimes, baby. All day.
Yeah, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a Danny Dimes highlight tape, right, and then just like have that playing in the background, okay?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll send it to you. All right, guys, let's get out of here, right? So anyway, guys, follow me on Twitter at Usaid Koshul. Check out Anthony on Twitter too. He's at Anthony_Rivardo. Check out his work on Empire Sports Media too. We had Alex Wilson on last week, so hope to have both him and Jordan on again at some point in the future. And then Mike's got our podcast mascot. He's officially the podcast mascot. Barkley. Go follow Mike on Twitter at MikeTrainerMFT. Like I said, that's TRAINOR. Hopefully next week we get Barkley joining the show, because when Barkley joins the show, like, it's more lit. But we'll be back. We'll be back next week, guys, with another excellent guest. But until then, peace out and have a great rest of your week. And we'll actually see you guys next month.
That's right. Enjoy the Super Bowl, guys.
Oh, yeah.